morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. We kind of stumbled into this wonderful meeting. Mayor George Maldonado connected us with the senator when we didn't get geared up, and she was nice enough to listen to our sadness and our disappointment. And then she reached back out and said, hey, can we schedule another meeting with education stakeholders and talk more about Santa Cruz County schools, needs, gaps, weaknesses, how I can help. And so here she is to spend time with us this morning. Thank you so much, Senator.
Thank you, Superintendent. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Gabaldon. I'm your Arizona State Senator. I have been representing Santa Cruz County since 2013 when I first got elected into the State House. Spent 8 years in the State House, and this is my 5th year in the Senate. Education has always been a priority, and I should say public education, because I emphasize the public because of what is happening through our state of Arizona in regards to the vouchers, ESA, etc. But we can talk a little bit more about that. But what I'd really like from us today is to actually have a really open conversation, kind of talk to each other, learn from each other, teach each other. There's so many educators in this room, but as my father always says, he always told me, you are always going to be a lifelong learner. So here I am, here in Santa Cruz County, and I really want to special thanks to Superintendent Downey's office, but especially to all of you that I have met over the years and have really built some really positive, very good relationships with Santa Cruz County. And I'm just here to listen. So this agenda is going to be very fluid. There's no like, okay, we're going to be stopping and talking to this. What I really would like to do is actually start talking about what is on your mind. Before that, I have a few more comments. The state of Arizona, in my personal opinion, we do 3 things: we educate, we medicate, we incarcerate. So when it comes to public education, that's at the top of the list. And in my personal opinion, and what I say is coming from me, I'm not going to speak for my caucus unless I say I'm speaking for my caucus, is that it's very, very important that we really emphasize our funding to public education, because I remember sitting in a committee meeting a few years back, and the director of the Department of Corrections was asked a question, and the question was, how do you plan for how many beds you have in your prisons? And he says, students that are reading by 3rd grade level. So that just that has always stayed with me in regards, so that if we can invest in public education, we're going to have less inmates. And I truly, truly believe that. So I know all of you are doing an excellent job, and I see it every day with all your A+ schools, with the high graduation percentage that you do have in Santa Cruz County. I mean, I'm just so thrilled and proud to be part of working as a team for Southern Arizona. A little bit more about me. I serve as minority whip now for my caucus, and it's very important to me that I bring back this information to my caucus so that we learn from each other. But again, having those voices at the legislature, because this is what it's all about. As a public servant, I'm giving you a voice, and I want to continue to give you a voice at the state senate. So next, what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce you to one of the most amazing young ladies that I know. She's my staff, Courtney Costa, who actually staffs education committee, but I know I'm putting her on the spot, but I want her to give her a couple of minutes to actually tell her what she's all about, and all those technical questions that you're going to throw at me, she's going to be able to help me with the response on that. So, Courtney.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning. Courtney Acosta, Policy Advisor for the Arizona Senate Democratic Caucus. As the Senator mentioned, I staff both the Education Committee and the Natural Resources Committee. So I'm from Douglas, Arizona, and I feel like the last time I've been in Nogales for a good amount of time was when I would play sports. And it's like anytime I meet someone from Nogales, I'm like, did I play you at once? Because I know you all know the rivalry between Nogales and Douglas. So it's really fun to be back, but especially in this capacity, it's an honor. Staffing Senator Gabaldon, she is an absolute champion for her district, and truly for me, anytime I have an opportunity to be in a district and to talk to those in the field and on the ground, it's always the most special experience for me because it really makes the work that we do at the Capitol a reality. And being from a small border town, I think that it's so easy for our voices to be excluded at the table. So it's really an honor to be here with all of you today and to hear from you, and hoping I can be as helpful as possible when it comes to answering any sort of technical questions that you may have about what's going on and any updates we can provide.
So, three more things before we open it up, and I'll give it back to the superintendent. The first thing is I had the opportunity to hire this young lady, and I have never looked back. That was a great decision. The second thing is just so you know, I'm kind of limping. I fractured my left hip, and I pulled some muscles. So if you see me stand, please don't stop talking. I just need to move every once in a while. But this meeting was so important to me that here I am. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to go around the room, and I'd like you to introduce yourself. You know what your capacity is as here in Santa Cruz County, and also one thing that you would like to get out of this meeting.
So I'm Patty Molina, Senior Director of Community Health Services with Mariposa Community Health Center. I do a lot of work in collaboration with the school superintendent's office and many school districts with my department, focusing on education to students. So I'm looking forward to learning more and seeing how Mariposa can help.
I'm Terry Sprigg from the Santa Cruz County School Superintendent's Office. I'm grants manager. And I don't know, I think it's just a good opportunity to hear each other and see what steps we can take and to be proactive given the current climate.
Hello, I'm Karen Munoz. I'm the Chief Deputy here at the Santa Cruz County School Superintendent's Office. Thank you for coming. I think this is a great, I'm looking at the room. Wow. Yeah, it's great. So thank you all for coming. I think what I want to maybe get out of it is more of what maybe your office could help with in Santa Cruz County. You know, maybe there's a little, not really a disconnect, but I just want to know what's available at the state level for whether it be our grant programs or teacher shortages or things like that that are going on in our community. I think that's a big, the teacher shortage is a big thing. Yeah, thanks to the teachers. So I know how hard it is for the superintendents and the teacher shortages.
Good morning, my name is Luis Carlos Davis, Santa Cruz Supervisor for District 1. Thanks for being here. And as the county, we're just open to help when it comes to education and to collaborate in any way possible.
Good morning, Jennifer Argros. I work for the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. I get to be the Family Resource Center Program Director all day, every day. I work in early childhood and I work a lot in prevention, and so I'm really interested in how we can leverage early childhood to really catapult the K-12 education system. And I'm open to listening to all what everybody else is doing. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Rosie Stewart. I'm with the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. I'm the Family, Consumer, and Health Sciences Area Assistant Agent. I'm based here in Santa Cruz County with a small appointment in Cochise County. And I oversee all of our early childhood, health and wellness, parenting classes or programs. And what I would like to get out of today is just learn more and see how cooperative extension can be of use to the community.
Good morning, Jessica Harrington. I am the Senior Regional Director of the Southeast Area of First Things First, and that means I have the privilege and honor of working with our 5 regional partnership councils in Pima and Santa Cruz, with 1 regional council, with many of our volunteer amazing leaders here today, and our amazing staff here today. I'm here to support them in my capacity. Also, I am really looking forward to hearing perspectives and listening and learning and seeing how First Things First can partner
started for, I was serving on First Things First on the South Lima, and she just really educated me on early childhood development. It's so wonderful to see Jessica.
We'll see. Thank you for your support.
Good morning, everyone. Francisco Padilla, I'm the regional director here at Santa Cruz for First Things First. As Jessica mentioned, I'm here to listen to all of you, our partners, and hear about, and hopefully discuss some more collaborative opportunities between us and our partners.
Good morning. Sena Brown, Chief Financial Officer for Santa Cruz Valley Unified. Welcome. Thank you for coming. And hopefully I want to listen more about the appetite from the state level on redesigning the voucher programs. And I use the term redesign because I don't believe the vouchers are going to go away. I think they're here to stay. I guess the way they are designed today, they're detrimental to us, K-12. So I wanted to see if there's any appetite to redesign.
Hi, good morning. David Luke, Superintendent of District 35. I'm just looking forward to us being able to collaborate and see what we can do for the upcoming legislative session. I know there's going to be a lot of different education topics and issues, and how can we make sure we advocate for our community.
And Mr. Lugo actually was kind of my first go-to down here in Santa Cruz when I first started, so thank you very much, sir. Doctor?
Good morning, Bill Williams. I'm a pediatrician by training and the Associate Medical Director of Mariposa. I think healthcare and education are very much intertwined. Have a passion, especially for pipeline projects. We have so many kids in our community that are interested in healthcare and really figuring out ways that we can collaborate.
What do you want to learn?
I'm Nicole Gonzalez. I'm a fresh school board member for Little Red, and I'm here proudly and happily. And we're not even halfway around this table, and I'm learning things. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for you coming down and lending an ear. A lot of times I think everybody here would probably agree, a lot of times Santa Cruz County is kind of just pushed off to the side, and we don't have a voice. So thank you so much for coming and representing us so well. I want to thank everybody else for being here. I feel like I'm sitting with giants, and I hope that this sort of thing will continue. This sort of collaboration. This is just the beginning of working together and meeting each other and getting the ball rolling however it needs to go. I'm just here to learn and see what can be done.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Kathy Romero. I'm the superintendent for Santa Cruz Elementary 28, better known as Little Red Schoolhouse. So, as everyone has said, I appreciate this meeting and you being able, having to have what everybody has to say. And I think it's very important, especially coming from a small little town, but especially like rural schools like mine, how vouchers have been affecting. And I agree with you, they're probably not gonna go away, and there's some legit reasons behind it, but hopefully to be able to push through so that public education can come back strong as it was before and not see as much as the loss of enrollment within our public education system.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. John Fanning, Supervisor District 3, former educator in SCD 35. And member of the First Things First in Santa Cruz County. This is fantastic, getting everyone at the table. I always go back to arrows pointing in directions. I think everyone's arrows in here are pointing in a direction. It's important that if we want to get something done, they all have to point in the same direction. So I think this is a great opportunity to collaborate and do so.
And Mr. Fanning and I, long history of collaborating, so thank you for being here.
Angel Canto, Superintendent in Dallas Unified School District. And I think what I'm hoping to get out of this is just as we're all talking and sharing to begin to identify those spaces where we can collaborate between local and state government, because we're a pretty tight community. I think we all lean on each other and leverage each other. But I think the needs of a rural community are so much different than other parts of the state. So our needs are different, and if we can collaborate and identify those spaces to benefit the students in our county, that would be amazing.
Good morning, everybody. Jorge Maldonado, Mayor never said no, you never questioned it when I asked you, and I know you're a hard worker. You know, first I want to apologize because I'm going to have to step out. We got the border closed right now through a riot in Mexico, but I'm going to have to step out. But I want to thank everybody, and this is what I bring. That's being the leader in the city. I want everybody to be on the table, everybody to work together. When they ask me about, how can we get supported, your name popped up right away, Ms. Gabaldon, because I know you're a team player and you're here to support us in Nogales and Santa Cruz County, and I really appreciate everything you do. And for everybody that's here, let's work together. Let's work together. Let's find out how the city, the county, the school districts, and everybody can work together. The private entity, everybody can work together to find better solutions, to find better education for our kids. I'm all for it. Count on me on the to help, and I'm a full supporter. Thank you.
And Mayor, thank you very much for taking the time to be here today. I know how busy you are, but I want to thank you as well for always taking my calls.
Thank you.
There's two young ladies behind the mirror.
For the young lady. Good morning. My name is Lisa Montoya, and I work for the Santa Cruz County School Superintendent's Office. I'm a grad coordinator. Thank you for coming down and listening to us, and I think everybody has the same goal here in mind, and it's our kids, our youth, and helping them succeed and getting the best education we can for them, and just being here for our kids.
Hi, good morning. My name is Paloma Barraza. I'm here with the school superintendents and the literacy facilitator for our mobile library, the Santa Cruzer. I'm looking forward to having an open conversation and hearing ideas and concepts on how we can better support our early literacy and our upcoming youth to set them up for success.
Good morning, Senator. Greg Lucero, I'm the CEO for the Santa Cruz County Provisional Community College. For Ms. Acosta, I'm from Douglas as well. It's taken me 25 years to be accepted into the community.
You're halfway there.
It's been tough, but I think I've succeeded. Because of the number of things I'm involved in, a lot of them go back to workforce development and training education programs. And because I know how the legislative process works and the need to get bill folders open up really soon, what I think is important for us is help in allowing us to create our own CTE district. As you know, we're at least Santa Cruz Valley and Nogales Unified are part of PIMA's JTED district. I don't know if you know this or not, but PIMA JTED is looking at floating a bond issue, and it's a substantial one. It's more than $300 million. If that passes, the taxpayers in this district will be subject to that bond package. So the need for us to be able to create our own tax district, independent of PIMA, is critical. So if that ballot measure gets voted on the ballot in March, I suspect that you'll probably see two other ballot measures to allow the school districts in Santa Cruz County to lead PIMA JTED. The other thing, as you know, because of the provisional community college, we are the only provisional community college that exists in the United States of America, and legislation to allow us to become our own standalone community college is something that we've been pushing for a long time.
And thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Lucero. We've had conversations regarding that, with the accreditation for the college standalone. Dr. Lopez, a lot of history there, and I know that we've been talking about legislation for the JTED. So, yes, we move forward.
Good morning, my name is Lupita Zuniga. I'm the Assistant Administrator of Human Resources for Santa Cruz Training Programs. I think I will pass it to my partner a long time. He can give you all the information we do. We take care of our kids. We call them kids. They're not kids, but for us they are. So Go ahead, Mrs. Gilham, this wonderful lady here.
Good morning, everyone. Senator, I'm Marina Galhouse, and I'm the director of Santa Cruz Training Programs. And we provide services to our children and adults with special needs in Santa Cruz County. We have a work training program, and we have a day program where we provide activities where we also partner with those in Santa Cruz County. Like Teresa Spriggs said, they have the arts and crafts here at the courthouse, and our guys come and they're just, they feel like it's so important that they can come to an art class that's offered by the community. They also get art at our program, and a group from Patagonia, Patagonia Creative Arts Association. Patagonia Arts Association comes to our program at least twice a month, and they also provide, they collaborate with us. And right now, I feel that somehow we need to make better connection with our high schools to partner with us, with the families that have children with special needs, so that they know that we exist, because a lot of them don't, despite being a small community. And what we offer is so important for their kids, so as not to stay home and just vegetate. So that's what I'd like to see if we can collaborate.
Thank you. And before we move forward, Dr. Lee, can you introduce yourself and the young lady next to you?
I'm Jennifer Lewis, the communications coordinator, and I support these ladies with whatever they need.
Hi, Senator. Dr. Pereira, the Chief Medical Officer of Mariposa. I mean, I think there are two things that we could talk about a lot of things, but two in particular. One is how Medicaid cuts are going to affect schools. You know, in order to have healthy children, we need to have healthy adults, and that's a big deal. We're very worried about that. And how Mariposa can be part of that solution. I know it's complex, but how Mariposa and Santa Cruz County can help alleviate the impact of those Medicaid cuts. I think the second one is healthcare education. Mariposa will start its first family medicine residency program in 27. That means we're going to be training our doctors. That's expensive. And so how do we work with the Rural Transformation Grant that supports GME and other things? But there are other things we're involved with the Nogales Unified School District, training medical assistants, so health education as a whole, but emphasis on training the doctors who we need to stay here for many, many years. That's critical for us. That's all. Thank you, Senator.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Ana Laura Prado, and I'm the principal for Michigan Academy of Excellence. And today I would like to hear not only how our scholars can benefit from your office, Senator, but also how can Michigan Academy can continue collaborating with our county.
Good morning, my name is Viviana Robles. I am the Curriculum and Instruction Coordinator at Mexicayo Academy. And as always, looking out for opportunities to continue learning so that we can better serve our community as well.
Good morning, Senator, and good morning, everybody. My name is Ramon Zelaya. I'm the Executive Director for Boys and Girls Club Santa Cruz County. And I just want to share, like, it's been an honor to work with many our partners here. It could be on a small level, big level, but I think everybody works like 5 times harder, even though we're a small community here. Everybody's hard workers, so it's an honor to see that. And I just want to continue this partnership, especially for our kids. You know, that's our number one thing. You know, we see about, well, last year we had about 691 kids registered, plus all the kids that come and do volunteer work. And so it's a really big thing that we're here for the kids. So thank you for being here.
Good morning, my name is Marcela Parra, and first of all, I want to say this is my former student. I'm so proud to be sitting next to her. I'm the adult education director, and I'm new to the position, but I'm not new to adult education. What our goal is to fill in the needs and the gaps of the community for the skills, for vocational training, for certification, anything that'll get them into a good paying career. Sometimes higher education institutions are not for everybody, and sometimes they are, and sometimes they just want something different. So I know Nogales right now, Santa Cruz County has a lot of strong young adults that need something different than college. So we're offering ESL, GED, we're looking at new pathways for careers like what Mr. Lucero was talking about, and along the lines of the JTEP, more vocational, more anything that'll meet the needs of our community to help us grow, thrive, and become a solid economic base that we should be and were once. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Senator. My name is Gabriela Alvarez, and I'm the school leader at City, Arizona. And what I look forward today is one of the things is just continue collaboration, learn from each other, and just build strong connection and partnership with everyone.
Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to make a few comments, and then we're going to go right into a conversation. Is first of all, Santa Cruz County is not forgotten at the legislature. I give you a voice every single day that I'm there. You know, this last budget, I was able to get some funding for some infrastructure within the city of Nogales. I'm going to continue to advocate for Santa Cruz County, and I have never ever forgotten all of you and all the individuals that I do serve. Workforce, wealth creation, Mr. Rossetto and a few others here in this room, we've had those conversations. I want to thank Santa Cruz County for actually putting some money towards that, being able to address that, so we can make sure that the students, lifelong students, can continue getting the education here and staying in Santa Cruz County, because that's very, very important. Early childhood development, I said a little bit about that, but I am a huge supporter of that. I'm the biggest cheerleader, not only because I served from 2008 to 2012 on South Pima Council, but because it's very, very important. Public education to me is early childhood development, K through 12. You have your provisional, you have your community colleges, universities, you have adult education. There is just so much that comes under that umbrella of public education. So it does not stop at K through 12. It is all about making sure that you know, our children are ready for school. And I love the motto is ready for school, set for life. And that's first things first. And I truly believe in that. And we've had conversations regarding how we can get more funding into that. We're trying to be very creative, and we meaning the royal we, a lot of conversations that are happening across the state. ESAs, I know that is the elephant in the room, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But my thing is we have to educate our communities regarding ESAs, because that is $1 billion coming out of our hard work and our taxes. So in regards to the Bruno College, I'm so glad that they're here. You know, but we have to continue to have more of that relationship with Pima Community College and Original. But it would be wonderful to have the Santa Cruz Community College. But in regards to the Original College, I want to thank all of you who have been part of that solution, working with South 32 and other industries, so that we can train our people that are not going to go to higher education in that regards. I was just at Maleo conference, it was the National Association of Elected and Appointed Leaders, and we actually talked about healthcare. So Dr. It's off, and what they're facing as well in regards to the impact of SNAP and their access, their portion of access. So I know that Medicaid is going to be very, very important, and it's being attacked. But as states, we can work together and we can find solutions, and we can push back on the administration and to say that, you know, our people are not going to go hungry. Our people are going to have health care, but we have to fight it together. And then the last thing regarding the arts, I know, there was money put into the state budget for the arts, and I will continue to advocate for that as well, because a lot of students stay in school when they find out they're talented, right? They're that portion of the brain, right? So if it be music or painting or sculpting. So very, very important that we continue to do that. And with that, do you have anything more to say before we go to the next?
No, I think we're ready.
Okay, so what's our first topic?
Funding.
Funding, okay. So right now, these last few years in the state has been very challenging when it comes to funding. You know, I personally believe that we are not funding the right things in our budget, but we do have a Democratic governor. I'm very direct, so you know, we have a Democratic governor, we have a Republican majority, and sometimes we don't agree on that. Like on the Democratic, so just to tell you, I'm very proud to be a Latina and a Democrat. And one of the things why I say that is because I don't want people to forget that I am serving one of the largest population that is increasing every year in the state of Arizona. We have to look at how we have become the population that are forgotten. But we have to continue to remind the state that we do have a lot of people here, but we have a lot of individuals that have come from other countries and that are going to be here to stay, and we have to invest in that. So funding is kind of a tricky kind of thing where the budget is something that is a challenge, and it was a challenge to me this last session when we finally did get a budget. You know, did we put enough into education? I personally said no, but there was funding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Courtney, and she's going to specifically tell you what was in the budget regarding education. Can you do that?
Yes, thank you, Senator, and I'll try my best. It's been a few months, and I've tried to turn my brain off a little bit in these past few months, but I feel like, as the Senator mentioned, funding is an increasingly difficult conversation to have in the state because the numbers have not looked great, the forecast has not looked great. We're going into the same type of scenario next session where the conversations have changed from what do we fund to what do we cut. And I think that's something that Senator Gabaldon and the caucus has always been strong about, is when it comes to needing to make cuts in funding, it should never be made in the area of education. And I think that it's important to recognize that it's while we do have an issue of not as much money coming into the general fund due to some of the taxing changes that have been made, as well as the ESA program, it's also an important conversation around what are we funding that is leaving us with no funding, and the reality of needing to understand the way things are working down in the legislature with having a split legislature, and the governor's office is unfortunately the way a budget passes and the way the votes end up getting there is you will have the legislative majority going to their legislators saying, what is your one priority so that we can get your vote? And it becomes more, we call them pet projects. It becomes more funding of pet projects versus holistically, how are we funding our state and the industries that rely on our state in order for our economy to be successful, but also our youth. And I think unfortunately that's where we fail, because we're piecemealing all of these different projects rather than thinking holistically where is funding necessary. And I think, so I worked at the Department of Education when the ESA Universal Program first started, so I've had to really live through that expansion of the program, and I think the reality is it's costing our state a lot of money, and it was promised to the state that that wouldn't be the case, because we would just see funding switching from our public school districts to the ESA program, but that's proven to not be the reality whatsoever. And I think that when we talk about what do we need in order to see some sort of positive change in direction when it comes to what that's costing the state, is I think needing to have a more holistic discussion around this change in funding and where the direction of the funding is going is not just about our public schools, but it's about healthcare, it's about early childhood education and higher education, because the reality is that money is coming from one pot, and that pot's called the general fund, and that pot funds public schools, it funds public health, it funds our correction system, and all of the industries that rely on our state and our budget. And it's going to take those diverse voices and those diverse industries to start speaking up and saying, you're not only taking money from our public schools, but you're taking money from our public health needs and our universities, and I mean water. Senator Gabaldon is a big advocate on water issues as well, but I think that's what it's really going to take in order for us to see some sort of positive impact when discussing the voucher program, is really everyone talking about how it's not only impacting our public schools, but them as well. But the reality when it comes to the budget with education is we've been playing this like math game between what's ongoing funding versus one-time funding, and I think that that's left our schools in an area of instability, right? Great, we've gotten that stable funding for district additional assistance, and we've gotten that one-time funding for poverty weight, but what it means for Senator Gabaldon and other legislators down there is it's going back and advocating for the same thing next year, because one-time funding is never promised. So it's having to go back there and have the same fight, and it's gone from fighting for an increase in funding for public education to now just fighting to keep it where it's at. And that's extremely disheartening, right? Because if we're keeping things where we're at, how are we ever going to see any sort of progress? So I think what we saw in the budget this last year was maybe not so much of like a formula change in a decrease or an increase, but that is because what we've managed to do in fighting in this budget is just trying to make sure that our public schools don't see any sort of significant decrease. And I think the part of the reason why there wasn't any drastic decreases, I'm sure you all have been hearing a lot about Prop 123 and the future of that, and the legislature has backfilled that funding because they are legally obligated to do so with the expiration of Prop 123, but I think that that's a conversation that we're going to have next legislative session, because Republicans claim they want to do something about Prop 123. We would all like to see that happen, but I think the real argument happening in the room and the real debate is how does that money look and how is it earmarked? Because right now it's very flexible for our school districts, but there's a lot of conversation around using it for teacher pay, using it to put ESA vouchers in the Constitution. So in the budget this past year, it was a lot of, it's a little hard to explain without seeing it on paper, but it was more of a mathematical game of just how do we change things from ongoing to one time, so that this coming school year, our school districts don't see any sort of decrease or increase in the funding that the state provides. And I think part of the discussion, and that's been included in the budget, is the AEL, the aggregate expenditure limit. Thanks to having a Democratic governor, we have seen the legislature approve or essentially waive that limitation on a 2-year basis, but we're coming up on a statewide election next year, and I think that's something that's just been up in the air and something that we need addressed too, which would take a ballot initiative. I've always seen it as like pretty common sense, right? If the legislature is approving a budget, why are we then putting our public schools in a position where they have to get permission to use the money that has been approved for them to spend? But I think the reality is it's that the AEL has become more of a political tool down at the legislature and has been kind of like dangling it over our heads in order to get votes. So I think that when we talk about the budget and what ends up in it is we've gone from having to once upon a time we were able to claim wins as increasing funding for community colleges or implementing new adult education programs, to now having to claim wins of just keeping things at where they're at, and that's basically what we saw in this past budget. But I think that there's an important discussion to be had around enrollment. I'm not familiar if Santa Cruz County has experienced any sort of recent school closure discussions, but I think that obviously plays a role in terms of funding and how can the state step up in addressing that issue, because while a lot of it is related to decline in enrollment and the expansion of school choice, whether that be charter schools or the ESA program, I think that where I'm very interested in hearing from the community is how can the state get creative in supporting our public schools financially, because what we will be told when we go to the state and we say our schools need money is we're going to be told, well, they don't need money because they're losing students, therefore they have less costs, and we all know that that's not the reality. So I think that's we're trying to figure out how to get creative in our funding streams.
Thank you, Courtney. There's a few points, thank you, Courtney, for sharing that, is Arizona has a flat tax, and so there's less revenue coming into our state, so keep that in mind. But also, you know, we're actually gonna be talking about tax conformity, and the governor has come out and has said that she's really looking at that, and usually it's just one of those bills where it's like everyone passes, yes, we agree with the federal government, well, it's gonna be different here in the state, and so, and we can talk about that later, because this is about, but school closures have been something that when I was at Maleo, we actually talked about. A lot of schools across our country are closing, and because of these vouchers or ESAs. So when ESAs originally started, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but this is all was for special needs, for our students being able to go, and then now it has just become it's been very abused, and you've heard it in the news in regards to how that is. So we have to really look at how we can claw back some of that money, a lot of that money, so that we can put it back into public education, which is very important. So the three things that we are going to be fighting for is affordability, making sure that people can go to the grocery store and be able to feed their family. But public education, but that includes jobs, that wealth creation, being able to have corporate Arizona be part of that solution. And we have to get the business community back in and sit there and say, you have to invest back into this. And I know that there has been that here in Santa Cruz County, so but healthcare as well. We have to make sure that our families are taken care of. So those are the top three priorities that I see that's coming up this next year: is affordability, public education, so that would be jobs, and then also healthcare. Very, very important, because we need a healthy community and that. So, but I want to put it back into funding. I'll get back to Mr. Lucero, but funding is very, very important, and how we do that is we as legislators cannot do it alone. We need your voices so that you can continue to remind us how important this is, because our schools are our hubs. A lot of things happen in our schools, right? We have healthcare fairs, or they just bring the community together. So, Mr. Lucero.
Thank you, Senator. We understand the state's problems, but I think I want to focus on Santa Cruz County, and I think we have a solution. And Ms. Costa sort of touched on financial issues. And for those of you that don't know, South 32 is into production. They estimate that they will double they never contemplated a new mine opening up in Arizona. So now you've got this whole big new multi-billion-dollar project being developed right next to us, and they, being the private sector, have no problems paying the property tax. The property tax is going to be collected, but we won't be able to spend it because of the expenditure limits. All we can do is incrementally increase our tax rate, and that doesn't get us anything. You know, if we're, you know, collecting a couple $100,000 each year, 2% increase isn't gonna cut it. So if we would look at a creative way to allow Santa Cruz County governments to access the taxes that are going to be collected and reinvest them into our community, that would solve our problems locally tremendously. I mean, I think you would see everybody here all of a sudden flush with cash, being able to implement and do projects and do programs and take care of our needs without having to go to state legislature at all.
And thank you very much for bringing that up, because there has been legislation introduced by Democrats that are never heard. So yes, there is that hunger and that need to actually address that, but we are ignored, and as Courtney put it, it's a political football, right? And again, how we face that is, you know, and I'll be blunt, is we need new leadership at the legislature. We need individuals that are going to truly look at everything that is involved. And unfortunately, we are always kind of playing defense. But I agree with you, whether it has to be addressed, and how we address it is going to be one of those issues that we and I'm talking the entire legislature has to come to. I agree to disagree, but let's find common ground. And we haven't done it.
Natural resources, if you look at some creative way to look at it, if you have a new major mine opening up in your community that it came after expenditure limits were set, can you predate it and say, no, now they've got to be able to go back and redo the formula to allow that revenue to be utilized in that community, because they're going to have a huge impact, and we won't be able to touch those dollars.
But, you know, focusing on Santa Cruz County, yes, but also, you know, we need to have the buy-in for the rest of the state, right? And the thing is there is that need, right? There is growth all over. Okay. But yeah, I know Santa Cruz County is very, very important. I understand that. But in order for me to advocate for Santa Cruz County, I have to be part of those discussions for the entire state. Thank you, Mr. Lucero. School closures, can some superintendents,
We don't have that issue in our community. We've been very stable in both school districts, larger school districts, and not sure the smaller school districts, but we are fairly stable as far as enrollment goes, although we do project annually to see a reduction just because of birth rates. I mean, birth rates
Yes.
is one of the other issues that you see nationally and why. It's not only the voucher system, but it's the birth rates that we won't see until 2030, supposedly start to see an increase. So that's one of
Before I ask Courtney to speak, is those overrides, right? And people, you know, school districts throughout our state and including Santa Cruz County, you know, unfortunately that's what we have to do because the state does not fund public education fully.
And just before you, and we're very fortunate to have overrides in both districts, our larger districts, that are the smallest two in the state of Arizona. Because we understand our constituents and know what they can afford, and so we're very cognizant of that within our community to make sure that we get enough to keep those tax rates lower for them.
I think it's very unfortunate that we have to put it on the backs of taxpayers to fund our schools when the state of Arizona should, so I know.
Thank you for mentioning the dead cash. Whenever I get to like have conversations with those of you in the school districts and you mention things like that, like I've heard this before, anecdotally, so it's great for me to be able to take it back and say that I directly heard it from your mouth and can share that, because over the past few months with the federal shutdown and the concerns of SNAP funding, I had been hearing conversations around the state trying to find solutions to address the lapse of the SNAP funding, and dead cash was brought up, and I did have a conversation with our leader and assistant leader to inform them that our school districts have been begging for years to address the legislative issues for those school districts that have an issue accessing that dead cash. And there was actually former Senator Bennett last year, before having lost his re-election, had introduced what we were calling like a school finance omnibus bill, and a lot of the provisions in there were to address the dead cash issue, because he was a Republican, but very open to the suggestions of the education stakeholders who mentioned like there's all of this funding sitting there that we can be using for all of the other areas of need, but because of the way legislation is written, that's why we call it dead cash, is because it's just sitting there unused. And there was a bill to address that. Unfortunately, it stalled in the process because there were some of his colleagues that were concerned with other aspects in the bill. So I think it's a conversation we can have about trying to revive that. But I just want to let you know that I had a conversation with our leader to let her know that if we hear any of these suggestions of using our school district's dead cash to address other areas of need, we need to put a hard stop to that, because if we are going to be allowing any sort of access to dead cash, it needs to be access that our public schools have, and not just going back to the general fund or addressing another issue. And not to say that the SNAP concern was not an extreme concern for our caucus, but we just find it extremely unfair that our school districts have been begging for access to this funding for a very long time. We're not going to give that access to anyone other than public schools. So I just want to let you know that we're aware of those rumors, and we're going to do everything that we can to push back against that. Not only push back against it, but try to introduce legislation to give our public schools full access to that funding that's sitting there.
And one of the things that we, thank you, Courtney, one of the things that we've been doing is we've been actually going into social media, right? Because, you know, it's nice to put it into the newspaper, but how many people pick up the newspaper? So, you know, those videos, so I would really like, if anyone's willing in the room, to actually do a little snippet. We can work with our communications director, with Courtney, and we can get those videos, and we can do it together, or you can send something and I can be, right, and we can do these videos. But I actually really put like our ranking member, Senator Diaz, there as well, talking about the issues that are very, very important to Santa Cruz County, but because it's going to resonate with the other counties as well. So thank you for that. And I really want to do this because what I'm finding is that, and I really wasn't into social media, but now I'm in there, and I have to tell you, there's likes, there's comments, right? Good and bad, but there's comments, but people are learning that, you know, it's like, this is what's happening. Hello, you know, wake up, we need you, right? A lot of my constituents say, well, it doesn't impact me, so I don't worry about it. But then I tell them, yeah, well, this maybe doesn't, but if we don't address this, it's really gonna impact you down the road. So again, this is very, very important. So this is why these conversations are very important.
Senator, I had and I'm just curious, and we can ask the people in the group, through social media, I saw a video of the teacher shortage and how it is not only how it was, but it's growing and growing. And so, are there any measures to address that? I know that there was a bill that wasn't passed. Can you talk a little bit about that? I'm concerned, and my concern is I was a teacher for a very long time, retired from the USD, and every year you would see this trend, but now, and I've been out of the classroom for 9 years now, but it's like a snowball effect, and maybe ask the group if they're experiencing that.
And before I ask the group, thank you for bringing that up because that's been a topic since day one. I'm talking back in 2013. So you know, Red for Ed, right, and being able to push back on the governor at the time, etc. And but teacher shortages is because of the larger picture, right, with the lack of funding, etc. Right, school districts have to look at that. Teacher pay is very low. You know, I was actually talking to an educator, and she was like, I moved from Arizona and I moved to another state because they don't respect me in Arizona, and that just really broke my heart. So teachers are very, very important to us in the state, and teacher shortage is something that's going to be ongoing. But how we address that is something that needs to come from the education community, and conversations with AEA, right, with Save Our Schools. I mean, all the, as we call them, the alphabet groups, is that they come together and it's like, well, how do we address that? And at the legislature, I personally think that we're not really looking at that. We're not really addressing that in a sense. We're giving like it's like that. I think about it as this. It's like this dead flower, and you give it a little bit of water. It's like, oh, it's coming back. But we don't. It's not moving. It's not there really doing that. So that's how I see it. Is where we are giving a little bit of you know. Okay, we're gonna feed it, and then let's say, okay, then we're fine. And I think it's the lack of understanding in regards to us as legislators. We know how important education is, but we differ in our opinions regarding you know, ESAs and public education. And to me, public education is about our schools cannot say no to our kiddos. All of you cannot say no to our kiddos, but private schools can. And you know, and all due respect, you know, hey, I am for school choice, but it should be for individuals that need it, but also people that can afford it themselves. And again, I'm being very direct. A lot of these private schools are the haves. They don't need the money. They can afford to send their children, their students to these schools. But how do we combat that when it's not just our state, but it's nationwide? Where the administration is pushing that agenda, and we have to push back, and we have to stand strong, and we have to sit and say enough is enough. And again, it goes back to leadership. We have to put leadership not only in I'm talking in a broad sense, not only on the federal level or state level, but on our local level as well. Making sure that we have individuals that are representing us that and statewide represent and being able to address that and push back on how and think creative. We're always the state is making you have to think creative and outside the box, and and, that's not fair, but that's the reality, and that's a reality we are going to be faced, and we are going to conquer it together.
Senator, can I touch on, I think you mentioned, hearing about a bill related to teacher shortages last session, and I mean, we see a lot of bills related to educators. I want to assume you may be referring to like the teacher pay aspect, and I think that it's important. I think this is a perfect setting to have the conversation about Prop 123 when it comes to teacher pay, because you're going to hear a lot in the news about it, and we continue to hear about Republican measures and proposals that have been starting to go through the legislature but haven't been successful, and you will hear a lot of rhetoric that it's about teacher pay and that Democrats are opposing increases in teacher salaries, and I think that it's really important for there to be transparency, that when we talk about those bills that we see, the reason why you will see the Democratic caucus pushing so strongly against those type of measures is because we think they're actually not about teacher pay, but kind of checking a box, because my job is to read that language and to understand. This sounds great in summary, but when you look at the devil in the details, what does this look like when it actually is implemented and goes into effect? And what we saw in those bills was that would it have been an increase in teacher pay? Yes, but only for a very small population in educators, both because of the way that they define educator to only mean a certificated teacher, and I think we're all aware that those are not the only educators that exist within our school districts. We have our special education educators who sometimes are not certified and don't fall under that definition. We have our teacher aides, we have, our school counselors, like the list, the definition of educators in our point of view is far more expansive than their definition of educator. And if you were to see something like that pass, what's going to happen is you're going to see school districts end up in very difficult situations where they don't want to just see that increase for that very small population of educators. So what our school districts are going to do is they're going to have to find that funding elsewhere to make sure that everyone is seeing that equitable increase. And not only was the definition of teacher very, very narrow, but it also included a performance aspect. So you had to have received a specific level of an evaluation from your school district in order to be able to access that increase. So I just think that it's very important to be transparent about what that looks like in front of us.
Thank you, Senator. I was going to say that yes, funding is a big issue as far as newer generations going out there, and yes, of course, agree that like our student loans are higher than what we go in, and then we can't afford to buy our house or living expenses. But one of the other things that I've heard recently as well is from teachers that are very close to retiring as well, is that the amount of duties that is being placed on them, for example, they need to get their re-endorsement for the following school year, and yet there's no funding, and we have to take 5 courses, we have to take these credits, and then where's the funding coming for us to take these courses? So they're close to retiring, and they're like, guess what, I'd rather retire and have to go back to school when they get their reading credentials while they're doing their teaching methods, or they've already been teaching 20+ years. So like, why am I going back to school when I have all these, and before we could be grandfathered in. And now instead of doing more credit to the service that they have put in and the amount of expertise that they have, they're feeling like, well, we're getting swamped. Now there's an additional thing that we have to do that's not being funded and yet required to continue to be in the workforce. So that's one big issue, not only the funding, but also them feeling that they have to continue their education without the right amount of funding to be able to pursue those credentials that they need. So it's the stress of it as well. And I know this isn't saying out there, but a 14-year-old autistic child 14-year-old autistic child, and he's like, but they're the ones that teach every other profession, right? We've heard it, but it just caught my attention that he made that association, which I know he hadn't heard before. He's all like, that's where all the other jobs come from, and why is it so underpaid? And this is a 14-year-old autistic child. And one thing that I also wanted to mention as far, well, Santa Cruz County, we're all rural schools, but then there's 3 school districts too within our community, and I'm one of them, completely one school districts. And how most of the school districts are able to survive with their overrides and their bonds, because they have that support, and the taxpayers are willing to bring that in and help the educational system. But with smaller schools like us, which I feel we're gems in itself, all of our schools are, but it's a different type of schooling. And we are not allowed to do overrides and bonds because of the number of taxpayers within our communities. So then just recently we had to do a truth in taxation, and that's just to be able to get the extra amount of money the school needs through a small schools adjustment. So that brings in a toll within the community as well, because those increases have to be substantial enough without the tax voters having much of a say, which I know hurts the community, hurts everyone. But then where do small school districts like us get that extra funding? Where's the one school, of course, district, K-8, we don't, and we do have 3 of those small school districts within the county. And we don't want school closures for us. Of course, we want to continue going. Like I said, they're a gem within itself. But where do we get that extra help needed to be able to sustain?
And thank you for your comments, because across the board, yes, that a lot of school districts we're facing that, you know, and again, Santa Cruz County is I think all schools are gems. I mean, the track record of the schools here in Santa Cruz County are excellent. No matter what school is educating, you know, our students. But you had mentioned something.
Yes, I was curious if you were talking about, when you mentioned endorsement, are you referring to the literacy endorsement?
Yes.
I want to provide an update and kind of what we're hoping to look forward to in the next session, because we have heard those concerns, and I think we're all in agreement, right? Like we need to fix our literacy issues within the state, but what's the right way to do it? And I think the intentions with the endorsement were good intentions, but we are fully aware that it didn't come with any sort of funding stream. So not only are you talking about the costs associated, but you're also talking about the time that educators have to put in to be able to receive that. So I've been having a lot of conversations with the Arizona Education Association, because I know that this is a really big issue for them, and I think that they've been having some pretty promising conversations with Republican legislators as well to introduce some sort of legislation next session to address the endorsement issue. If it's not completely getting rid of endorsement requirements, can we expand the exceptions that exist in there to address the grandfathering issue? Can we incorporate some funding streams in there to address the costs that come with that? So I just want to let you know that that's on our radar and something that we're looking to address next session.
Thank you.
Definitely the certification requirements continuing to increase. Some say, oh, I understand where some of these ideas may have come from, but it's not how other states went about it to see the types of increases in literacy. They didn't put it back on the teachers who are especially looking at the level at which we pay educators in our state, nor did they put it back on the district, which if we're not going to put it on the teachers, then the district needs to try to find funding to be able to provide those programs to help meet the deadlines and statutes to get our teachers appropriately certified. So anything that could be done to help push it out in a better way that doesn't put the burden back on the educators again would certainly be helpful. It would be nice if the state was able to fund it, work with the Department of Education, the state board, so that that could have been rolled out in a really different way.
And that is so ideal. And so when us legislators, we look at model legislation, right? You know, what is another state doing that's succeeding, right? That it's a win for their state. And so we've been doing that. We've been introducing legislation over the years, you know, kind of looking at that model and looking at how successful it has been, right? But it's very challenging when you have individuals across the aisle, which if we don't listen to each other, we're not going to get anywhere. I'm not complaining about that. That's just a reality. But there is, as Courtney said, there is conversations being had, right? And that's why we have to continue to bring back this what I'm hearing today back to the legislature to share with them is that this is something that is coming from one of the counties, right? But I think every county is having the same conversation in regards to that, and we have to find that middle road, right? And we have to come to an agreement because at the end of the day, I truly believe us 90 legislators and the governor gets it. It's how we get there, and the thing is in order for us to continue to do that, we have to educate ourselves, right? And we have to come with that message. We have to come and sit there and say, this is successful. But this is what's the good things that are happening in Santa Cruz County, right? And let's model that and let's see how we can do that. But at the end of the day, in my personal opinion, we do not respect our educators, and I'm talking from the individual that empties out the trash cans all the way up to our superintendents, right? And that's the kind of thing where when we look at that, the investment in public education is so key. That is one of our priorities. That because public education is our foundation. If we do not have a strong foundation, we can't build. We cannot build upon that. And that's what's unfortunate. And that's what I think is lacking in that regards. Is because we're not really listening to each other. But I'm very encouraged hearing Courtney say that there is conversations in that regards, and that we have to bring everyone together. And Courtney brought up water, but I was part of the drought contingency plan, and an individual actually sitting kind of a table like this said, if everybody dislikes something out of the plan, it's got to be good, right? Because not everyone's going to get what they want, but education, we have to get what we want, because this is very important, our foundation.
Can I tag on one other thing then to build upon that? Because just like we have concerns obviously about educator pay, I think getting the education to become the educator is really important too. So being able to protect those monies like with ATA, that there's a teachers academy, set our post-secondary partners are able to provide those scholarships. We're trying to work in as many ways as we can to get people into classrooms. Some things I know we pay for in our districts, like partnering with the University of Arizona or Community College or the traditional college. But that ATA money, that's just another avenue to be able to get people to afford education. And I'm very concerned by the amount of things I've seen at the federal level with possibly reclassifying education as non-professional. I can't believe that. And the implications that could have for the money that you're able to borrow to become a teacher in one of our institutions. So protecting those pathways, those scholarship opportunities is going to be probably more critical than anything.
Let me address that and I'll get with you. Is the fact is yes, we're impacted by the federal government, and then here we are in the state, and then but it trickles down to a local level. And the thing is we are playing defense when it comes to the cuts or what's occurring on the federal level. We're losing a lot of money on federal funding that we had anticipated, and I'm talking across the board. So how can we look at that, and it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a big challenge on that. But again, one of the priorities is public education. Mr. Hussey.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on a couple things. One is you mentioned, or David mentioned that he's testified various hearings. I just wanted to point out that you've got a room of full advocates, and as you start looking at hearings and legislation, hopefully you have all our emails and you work with us to resolve the process, because if you need help, you've got a room full of people who are willing to step up and be voices. So don't forget about us, and as you look at legislation in the future, keep us informed and tell us what you need us to do and who we need to go talk to. So
Good point, thank you. Send emails, right? We can say it in committee, we can say it on the floor when we debate. You know, we can sit there and say, you know, so-and-so from Santa Cruz County or school. Actually, this is what's important, right? And say that, give you a voice, not only in committee, but on the floor as well. Tell us your stories. You know, we have what's called points of personal privilege, right? Stand up and say, I'd like to do a point, you know, comments, and actually read. You know, this is an email, this is a letter, right? And then we have what's called request to speak. Write your comments in there, and sit there. And we can go, or we can let's look at it. 565 people are opposing this bill. This is why, right? And show those numbers, and say, you know, the people of Arizona have spoken. Right? We're not sitting back, right? We have to continue to give the voice. So that's very good. Emails, you know,
David said he
phone
would
calls.
like to go speak at the legislature, so just call it.
Yes, Mr. You know, and you know, and that's very, very important. And testimony is very important. If you can get up to Phoenix and testify, because that testimony is part of something that's a record, right? And we can go back to that, right? And we can sit there and say, this is what was this testimony in the committee, and we can bring that to our conversation, our debate on the floor. So thank you for bringing that up.
And I think not only you yourself representing your school district and your community, sending an email, reaching out, testifying, but also having conversations with your colleagues in other districts that have that Republican representation, because you can't underestimate the power of actually, I've heard many times Republican colleagues saying, I heard from my superintendent in so-and-so school district say they have an issue with this, therefore I cannot support this bill, or I need to stall this bill. So, and I know a lot of you have those relationships, because at the end of the day, you put politics aside to support your students. So I think also having those conversations with those partners that you have in other districts is extremely impactful in the process.
I just wanted to comment on the shortage itself. I don't think it's just it's not just a teacher shortage, it's an educator shortage. I know what your point is. Because trying to fill admin positions is even more difficult at this point than it is to fill teaching positions. Because of those districts that took the Prop 123 and actually put it into teaching salaries, teachers don't want to go into administration, because why am I going to work 12 months and get paid only $10,000, $15,000 more than 180 days? Yeah, so that's that conversation we try to have with those, and I know admin always becomes the scapegoat when we're talking, especially at the legislature. I know superintendents are going to be a hot topic coming in January, from what I understand, with salaries, contract limits, contract amount of time, because of Tollison and some of those things are happening with Jeremy, and you know, not to throw names under, but it's all put us under, it's all put us under a microscope for things, transparency and so forth, and I think our community is always transparent. And so one of the things that, again, I'm just concerned with as the legislative session opens is I think we need to focus that it's an educator shortage, not just a teacher shortage.
But to look at Tolleson, and they bring up Tolleson, you can push back and sit there and say, look at the success of Nogales Unified, or Santa Cruz Valley, right? Look at their success, right? And push back with the positive and drown out all that negativity, because that's all they're doing is they're putting it in bright lights. Oh, look at Tolleson, look at Avondale, whatever it is, right? And that is something we have to combat, right? Okay, yes, okay, we dropped the ball, but let's help them pick it up and move forward, because this isn't about the district, yes, of course, but it's about our students. And I think I represent every student in the state of Arizona. Did you want to say something?
No, I love to hear the comments about the admin, because that is a constant rhetoric that we're pushing back against. I think it's extremely unfair to discount the role that administrators play in the the operation and function of our school district. So anytime I hear that and I'm able to take that back and quote that and use that, I really appreciate you mentioning that point.
I just have a comment.
I'm sorry, Mr. Verdugo, were you done?
Yeah, I was
Sorry,
just
thank you.
it's a whole shift to, so she wants to go, because I'm ready to talk about the additional assistance in school facilities.
Okay, thank you.
The
Okay,
velocity
thank you.
of where that's at and what you're seeing for the next session.
We'll pick that up.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
No, fine.
So at the beginning of the meeting, some of us introduced ourselves as to where we grew up. I grew up in the town of Florence, and it's not known for education. It's known for all the prisons. They have 7 prisons, last I checked, and a lot of those prisons are for contract. They have, I'm telling you, because there is no shortage of a population in that incarcerated group. And I think it might be important to bring in somebody from maybe juvenile corrections here in Santa Cruz County to invite them to this conversation at some point, because they have a piece to say about, yes, that third grade reading level. I saw it myself several years ago. I was actually in charge of teaching life skills and managing the library in our little Santa Cruz County Juvenile Detention Center. And we identified early on that these kids that they fell behind in 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. If they didn't have that 3rd grade reading, what happened? They became the class clowns. We all know this, right? It's just normal kid behavior. They become class clowns, they get in trouble, they're getting negative attention now, and pretty soon little Johnny is kicked out of school, and that's that. And so I think that's a piece that we're not talking about quite yet, and it doesn't really fit in neatly under any of this. But I think it's important to recognize that reading is such an important thing to encourage in not only the students in the classrooms, but in families and the community. But that's just a little comment I thought I'd throw out there. I don't want to see Florence grow for all the wrong reasons. Oh, and I understand that, and when I was a council member in the town of Santa Monica back in 2009 to 2012, one of the things was we had a P3, public-private partnership, and one of the things was we brought business, we brought the school district, and then the town, and we had a program where not only were we helping students with tutoring, but we were educating the parents. We were teaching them to read. And it was such a success. I don't know, I don't hear very much about it now, but back then it was, the sin of pride, right, where, my dad doesn't know how to read, right, and was able, but having that safe space and it started out very small, and then we were having a lot of parents that were coming that not only did they wanted to increase their literacy, right, they wanted to be able to read, right, and other books. They would bring books and say, I really want, by the end of this, these classes, I really want to be able to comprehend this book. So again, it's as I always say, it takes a village to raise our children, right? So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it's very, very important that not only is it just, it's a school's responsibility, it's all our responsibility, and I know that Mariposa clinics are part of that solution right now. A lot of the individuals that are here are part of that solution because you come together and you work together on that. So we don't want more of our individuals in prisons. We don't want them incarcerated, but that's a reality. And we again have to teach them, right, the GED or whatever, higher education while they're incarcerated. Very quickly, the town of Santa Monica, they own and operate a wastewater treatment facility. And while this young man was incarcerated, he actually got his water operator's certification, right? And the town of Santa Monica stepped up and said, okay, right, he runs it up. And he did that, he bettered himself while he was incarcerated. And so that's the thing that we need to do, is also that investment. And there's just so much we can do as a state, but we have to continue to look at thinking outside the box and when it comes to education, right? Doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, what we're doing in our K through 12, it's beyond that. And I think it's very, very important that we continue to have those conversations. But we really do need to look at who is educating us, and we have to invest in them. Thank you.
So I was just gonna go back to the,
Yes, please.
the school facilities, because I know that obviously the lawsuit, you know, was deemed that, it's not properly funded, and so, but it's still a continual issue for us, even when we go through, like it took 6 years, Ms. Brown, diligent work, for one of our schools to get weatherization. And we're finally now, being able to move forward with that, but it took us 6 years to prove that we needed this, that our school's falling apart before they would allow us to get additional funding for that. So my question is, with the next session coming in, is there, I know that they're going to file an appeal of the lawsuit, and then, but is there any conversation about adding more funds to this school facility?
Oh, there's always that conversation.
I mean, I know.
There's always that, you know, let's put more money. You know, but the thing is with, that's one of those funds that we sweep.
Yeah, I actually was just texting someone from the School Board Association this morning about the school facilities issue. I think all of this, the education groups are very concerned right now that what Republicans are wanting to happen is for it to get to the Supreme Court, because they're feeling pretty confident that the Supreme Court can overturn that decision, which will be extremely detrimental to our school district. So I think and I can't remember the legal terminology, but I know I can't remember which group, but a group had asked the courts to help put a price tag to it, and I believe that they have until like February of next year to provide that. So I think we're all waiting to see what that ends up looking like and what happens with an appeal and the Supreme Court. So there's the conversation of what's happening there. It's my understanding that the governor's office was having conversations around like, well, what do we introduce in our executive budget following this decision. But I think that right now the education stakeholders are also having conversations around, are there any opportunities to create new funding streams and sending something to the ballot to specifically address school facilities. But again, we have that funding has been stagnant. It's part of every single budget at this point. It's not been a conversation. It hasn't been a conversation about more money. It's been a conversation about not cutting the building renewal grant bucket of funding. So unfortunately, I don't have any like real concrete updates other than everyone's kind of racking their brains right now trying to think of creative solutions to take to the legislature to expand the funding stream for facilities. But it's something that is a huge priority for ours. I think it's one of the issues that's like easiest to explain to the public. The images that were put in that court decision are extremely disturbing of what you're seeing in our classrooms, and I feel like that's something that the public can visually understand, so it's a huge priority of ours.
And then our districts have a bond, or we just finished a bond, and again, putting the burden on our taxpayers because we're not getting the additional assistance funding that we need.
Yeah, but sorry, I forgot that you mentioned district additional assistance. That's another big fight that we just had this past budget and that we're gonna have to continue to have, because back when the ESA Universal was passed, part of the Republican deal was like, okay, fine, these Republicans will support the universal expansion, but it also needs to come with increased funding for district additional assistance. And then what we saw happen 2 years ago was some funny business played with the math in the budget, where it was changed from ongoing to one time. So now one time means we have to fight for it every single year. So I know that stakeholders are also pushing extremely hard against the governor's office to put that back in as ongoing funding.
I know that there's some individuals that believe that one-time funding is only affects not.
No.
Every time we see
we
one-time
fight it
funding,
every year.
it's
Yeah,
just.
every year.
No, not.
I know that, Courtney and I need to get going, you needed to, so I don't know how, but I'd like to continue this conversation, but I was hoping that everyone could like grab food, maybe take 5 to 7 minutes, grab food, and then come back and continue our conversation.
Okay, that's wonderful.